science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction.
Ship shape salutations, all you cognautes out there, and welcome to Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outside reaches of understanding. I am your host, as always, Nick, and I am joined tonight by my lovely co-hosts, Ayla and Mike. Ayla, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself today?
Oh, very good, very good. Another day in purgatory, can't complain.
Oh, yeah. No complaints.
Great. Mike, how you doing, man?
What salutation was that?
Ship shape. Ship shape. Yes, sir.
That's how I'm doing. Just
There
ship
you go.
shape in the ship in purgatory.
That's wonderful news.
So corny.
It is
Ship
corny.
shape, guys.
All right. Well, you know what? You guys have to come up with some, illiterate salutations at some point too. Then I get to be the one that judges it.
You know,
Oh,
I
man.
came up
What have I done?
with sodium chloride salutations, and you didn't think it was witty enough, and I get that. You know, I was going for S sounds, and I was trying to be
Well,
smart.
when you're talking about Poseidon, I think just salty or sea salt salutations would have been fine.
As I explained to you earlier, I was trying to work dihydrogen oxide in there because that's the water, and it sounds so
I
cool.
know.
And I was like, I'll just put sodium in front of it, but no, because salt water is a totally different. It's stupid. Like, why? Anyway,
Well, since we've already gone off the rails,
happy Friday!
yeah, happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. This is another exo bit for you guys. So this is going to be a short conversation that we have with y'all. We hope you enjoy it. This conversation is going to be based on the ancient thought experiment called the Ship of Theseus. And before I get into what the thought experiment entails, Ayla, just off the bat, from that title alone, assume that you never read what it was actually about. What would you think this thought experiment is?
I would think that it had to do with something predating a thesaurus because Theseus sounds like thesaurus. So, like, I'd probably think, okay, some Greek guy got into crazy stuff and something to do with, I don't know, words and definitions and stuff.
Very good.
Like, to be honest, because I'm not that smart. So
I would disagree with that. But
Yeah,
I
I
would disagree with that as well.
a wise man knows that he knows
Nothing.
nothing. Yes.
Yes,
Let's see what I did there.
Mike, what about you, man? What does the Ship of
Uh,
Theseus elicit in your mind?
Well, I see like a thesis. That's where my mind jumps to. So like some sort of Greek romantic notion that your thesis is your ship. You should always keep that ship right or something like that.
I like that. I think that sounds pretty romantic. Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're both very wrong. So
That's the best part.
Yes, teach me.
Actually, what's kind of cool about this particular thought experiment is actually it's one of the oldest documented thought experiments. So for those of our listeners who don't know, which you likely may or may not know about this, I'll give a little bit of a rundown, and then we can just jump right into the conversation. So the Ship of Theseus is one of the oldest of all thought experiments and is a paradox known as I said one of the oldest of all known thought experiments is a paradox known as the Ship of Theseus, which originated in the writings of Plutarch. It describes a ship that remained seaworthy for hundreds of years thanks to constant repairs and replacement parts. As soon as one plank became old and rotted, it would be replaced, and so on until every working part of the ship was no longer original to it. The question is whether this end product is still the same Ship of Theseus, or something completely new and different. It's not, at what point did it stop being the ship? If it's not, pardon me. So I thought this was a really interesting kind of thought experiment that we could debate now. And not only just in the sort of concept of what it's being delivered as, but it's obviously has parallels into the possibilities for what the future of humanity holds. So before we get into that more juicy stuff, do you guys have some just initial thoughts about the concept, Ayla?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I made the mistake of taking a class on personal identity. It was a philosophy class, but it was like a senior level class, so I was way out of my depth when I took it. So I didn't retain a lot, but this sounds very much similar to it. So, just the idea of like continuity of self. If like what really matters when you're trying to break something down and define it and um, acknowledging that the five senses, things that you can touch, things you can see and hear and stuff, sometimes can betray you when you're trying to consider the wholeness of something.
Mm. Yeah. What about you, Mike? What are your initial thoughts?
Well, uh, I think like I've been trying to like find the best way to word this because it does come down to like the self and things like that, but ignore it and just focus on, I guess, the ship. I want to say, or I want to think that it's a new ship once every part is replaced. Sort of like once you lose all your cells, or like every 7 years your cells dies until you're 25 or something like that. Then after that, you're screwed or whatever. But I feel like it's the same ship. Like unless the thing has changed form, like if it grew wings and now all of a sudden it can fly, then it's no longer the ship. But I feel like it's the same ship.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think I would probably agree with that, but then like I can probably spin myself in circles, arguing both sides of it. So I would think that there has to be something intrinsic to the shipness, right? And so perhaps the shipness is attached to the person. I mean, and this is where we probably get into like a little bit of the linguistics. So if it's the ship of Theseus, is the ship of Theseus still a ship when it's not his? So for instance, say they didn't even replace the ship, or any of the parts. It's just the owner that was changed. Would you consider it the same ship then?
Yeah, I mean, if it's so, this is where the question of like, where's the value of the ship, right? So, even if it doesn't change owners, even if it doesn't, trade any of its parts, if it's just sitting there, not going anywhere, does it have any value? And is the ship's value? I think the ship's value is more constrained to the voyage, and even if you have a new owner, as long as that same ship has that voyage, or it still maintains its original shipness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's interesting to bring up the voyage because you start to realize that the like identity of a thing, it's like its qualia, the qualities that it possesses. So, like the ship seems like kind of an old analogy. I think more about like my car, like my car is my baby. I've had it forever. I've replaced a good number of parts, but not every piece. And I think like if I were to give my car to someone else, so it's not my car, it's still my car. It's just somebody else took my car. And then, yeah, like if it does the same voyage, it can do whatever kind of voyage. It's still my car. So, but that's unique to a car. With the ship, there's like all these other things that kind of come into it as well. And so it's just interesting because you have the thing that's intrinsic, and then you have what we describe about the things. And it's like, well, if the ship had personhood, for example, could the ship say who it is? Or is everybody like putting their ideas on it, defining what it is? I don't know.
Now we're getting to like the worth of the crew on the ship, right?
No, it's true.
It keeps getting more and more minuscule.
So like what value of the crew adds to the ship, and if you change out the crew constantly, is it the same ship? I think the ship is a mixture of its crew its parts, and I guess its voyage.
Hmm. And you know what's interesting to me is that, and I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, just because I think you guys are you have really good, solid thoughts. So I just want to push against them a little bit. But the the concept of the voyage, I think, is a really good argument. But then I would say that if the voyage is a part of that, then you're removing the pieces that were on that voyage in the first place, would indicate that it isn't the same ship.
And, to that, I was just rereading the paragraph and I was thinking about it because it says that the story describes a ship that remained seaworthy for hundreds of years thanks to constant repairs and replacement parts. So it's kind of funny that just in that sentence alone, the intrinsic specialness of this ship is the replaced parts and repairs. It's not the journey. It's not the seaman. It's not even the original ship. It is the fact that it's this ship that is like a Frankenstein of parts that has also remained seaworthy for hundreds of years. It's become its own thing.
So it's the ability to float that makes the ship.
I think it's the hype around this ship.
The hype around this ship.
The hype.
So we've removed the voyage, so now the voyage is no longer a thing.
Right.
Not
Just
even the
fix that.
ship.
Yeah,
Just the hype.
it's the hype, like the clout around the ship. Like, hey, that's the ship of Theseus.
Mm-hmm.
It's been replaced so much over the years.
Yeah, but that would
know.
also kind of mean that the fact that it still floats is a part of its identity as well. Then,
That's
because
true.
it's about it's being repaired to maintain its seaworthiness. So
You're
the
right.
Ship
And
of
it's the
Theseus-
voyage. It's the hundreds of years of voyaging of these parts.
It's literally a thought circle.
Yep, as most thought experiments end up being.
Yeah,
Welcome to the loop.
that's right.
And then now the question is, does it matter?
Hey, right. I think you get into that point where you're just like, all right, well, it really doesn't matter. You can make yourself go crazy thinking about things
Can we
like
just get a bunch of people on the ship and go somewhere?
this. Yeah, right.
Well, here's where it would matter is if you were to take that ship and you put it next to another ship and both of them have a hodgepodge of different parts. And you do like the cups where you move them left, you move them right, you move them around, and you go, oh, which one's the ship? Like you can't tell. Like there's not a distinguishing physical feature on the ship, right? So like that's another thing where if you put it up against another ship, how do you tell the separateness of the two?
Well, I would assume that if we're just going to carry on with the concept, I think that the Ship of Theseus was already probably a unique ship. So when it's being replaced, I would assume that it's being replaced exactly as it was originally. And I think that may be the crux of this whole thing, is that if it is being replaced, like, so the carvings that were in the captain's galley, are those being replaced exactly, or are they being replaced with something new? And I think that ultimately, if you're having something that's being updated and recreated, as long as it's an exact replica of the thing that was before, then perhaps it retains some of its identity.
I don't know, man. It still gets tricky because if there's not a single part that's original. If they had kept just one part that had some sort of original component, I don't know. But that's what I mean about like the comparing it to a ship that's also composed of a bunch of parts. Because it doesn't necessarily say it's. Well, I was going to say it's not necessarily saying it's like the same ship with the same parts. Maybe it is, but if those parts exist, then you could just make a replica, and there's no way to tell.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And I think that that's true if they were both identically made. I think what I'm saying is that if the Ship of Theseus was its own unique thing at one point when it was originally constructed, then it is assumed that the updating of each piece of it would have to be, well, it's not, I guess it's not assumed, but I would assume in order to retain its character, it would need to be updated exactly as it was originally.
But then, who's manufacturing parts for just one ship?
Well,
you
parts-
make parts in like bulk, right? That's
Well,
how you
we-
make your money.
Yeah,
So
but you're also thinking in 2020 terms. I'm thinking of like the ancient Greek sort of lifestyle here.
hey, you and I just tried to
Where
make
they didn't
a
mass
silver
produce.
ring, and you need casts of these things, man. I don't know. I just think to myself like, you can't just be making a one-off for one ship, like, because you got to get skilled in it too. So
Even because it makes no mention if like technology updates on the ship. It's just the ship that gets replaced with the same parts. Even if you replace like uh, the aesthetics that the captain made with the captain's carvings with the new piece, I don't think that I think the captain adds something to the ship, but doesn't necessarily take anything away. Like when that part gets replaced with a new part with no carvings, you now have a back to new ship without any customizations on it, I guess. So I think
So
it's
is
still
it the ghost of Theseus that makes the ship?
probably both ships. Like if you have two of the ships built from the Ship of Theseus, it has to be driven. Like you go to two separate places at the same time and see the same unique thing. So yeah, there's some ghosts piloting those ships for sure.
Right. Well, I mean, also just the concept of like, okay, so if it's possible that things can be replaced, and if it's not an exact replica of what Theseus ship looked like, and it's still kind of the same ship, then I would ask, maybe is it the ghost that lived in Theseus's ship, or like the energy or spirit that was driving that ship at one point when we named it.
like the soul of the ship,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ship spirit.
The
ship spirit. I just got like a picture of sailors doing like cheerleading things, like
Usually
Team
ship spirit
spirit.
is just whiskey.
Yeah.
True.
Whiskey
Lots
and
of whiskey.
scurvy.
And a lemon every now and then.
Right. Well, the philosopher Thomas Hobbes later would take the problem a little bit further, and he said, if one were to take all the old parts and remove the ship, removed from the Ship of Theseus, and build a new ship from them, then which of the two vessels is the real Ship of Theseus? Now we're really getting into the weeds here. So basically, you remove all of the parts of the Ship of Theseus with new parts, and then use the old parts to create another ship. Which ship is the one?
They're all Slim Shady. That's the secret. They're all Slim. They're all the Ship of Theseus.
They're all Slim Shady.
Yeah.
What makes me think of sorry, I just heard that again. They're all Slim and Shady. Gosh, that's like over a decade old now.
That's over like 20 years old.
That's
Wow.
how we just like alienate our Gen Z culture. Just throw a really like 20-year-old joke in there.
Yeah, it's true. If any of our listeners are alive right now, we are old.
I would hope they're
Gosh.
alive. Do we have dead listeners?
Wait, did I say alive? I meant to say
Those are my fans. Sorry.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Oh my god, no! There's just been so much like death this week. Never mind. It's just on my mind. But wow, that's crazy. It gets dark. Yeah, guys, this is like a total distraction for us. But yeah, no. What was I saying before the Slim Shady?
You lost it.
I kind of did.
That's okay. We were talking about the concept of if you took all of the old pieces from the ship and made a new ship out of it, which one is it?
Right. Okay, so for this one, something came to mind, and it was meiosis or mitosis, when like a cell separates and creates two identical cells, but it was like from the same one. So it's almost as if it's like think of like you have or like a Tesla car, right? Let's imagine he made one Tesla and it was just the bee's knees and it was amazing. Everybody loved it. And so then he's like, well, I can make two if I split the parts and replace some of them. And so like they're both Teslas, but now it's like
I would say they're half
grouping.
Teslas.
I mean, like think about how we categorize, right? Like Ford, Ferrari, Tesla. It's because they took something and they just like replicated it. So, I mean, it wouldn't be the original Ship of Theseus, but it would be like the Theseus brand or something like that.
Well, and this kind of leads into the next a little bit of our conversation as we fast forward the clock to the age of 2020, when humanity is at the verge of singularity. We're going to start having the opportunity to download our consciousnesses. And I think that this little thought experiment is a perfect sort of thought experiment for the modern time, because we will all become the Ship of Theseus at some point in the future. And so my question to you guys is, are you when you're downloaded into that consciousness? Or that, I'm sorry, when your consciousness is downloaded into the machine, are you still you?
I'm gonna say no, and only
Hmm.
because I think it's naive of us to think that we already know what consciousness is, and that we can like digitize it. I think that whatever form it's gonna take is never gonna be quite right.
Mike, what about you? What do you think?
I don't think so, only because our some consciousnesses, not all, want to grow. So it would be like the ship of Theseus growing wings, like mentioned earlier before. So
You
if
said
you're
some want to grow, but not all.
not all, some are fixed, some which is fine. Like I've done this much with my consciousness. I need to do no more, so I'm just gonna enjoy my life. It's fine. But some are constantly growing as well.
Yeah.
And code won't. I don't think whatever program holds our consciousness would be able to grow in the same way. Like it would make, pretty good decisions on things that you want to learn based off of, I don't know, whatever's in your brain. But the joy of coming across something you didn't know that you wanted to learn is such a good human experience that I don't think it would transition well into digital consciousness.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that, like you're saying, Mike, this concept of growth and the consciousness growth, it certainly, if it was in a machine, it wouldn't have organic growth. It would have machine growth. It would grow in a way that only a machine can grow, or a code or whatever. But yeah, I think you're right. There is something intrinsic about human learning and human experience and growth that probably cannot be replicated by a machine. And further, I would say, even if it was, even if it was, I really don't think that would be you in there. Because what happens to the thing that's in your meat sack right now?
It's
Like,
true.
what happens to me? What happens to meat sack me? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
my consciousness can go have fun in the Matrix, okay, but I'm still here. Like,
You'll just be one of those GMO meat bags that they're gonna do for like replacing cows, but it's gonna be like a bundle of cells that hooks
grain
in
in a
and
jar.
yeah, but
Yeah.
they'll have to grow like a nose and some eyes so you can like get carted around and experience things.
But yeah,
Obviously.
I think that's kind of like my point, though. I just don't really think that it's possible to. I mean,
Achieve.
yeah, because you're not transferring meat sack me to the computer. You're just transferring my thoughts.
It's true. Well, and I think that like the thought of like aspiring for immortality came to mind because what is this idea of downloading your consciousness? I think it's just the idea of having a record of yourself that's immortal, that can be accessed. And
Yeah, it's
like
just for other people, though. It's not
right,
even for your own
exactly.
enjoyment.
Exactly. And then you think about it, like back in the day, becoming an author and writing a book was one of the best ways to achieve posterity. Then it became being a celebrity. Of course, the most organic way is to have kids too. But like, I think that as more people become, as time develops, you're going to have more books, you're going to have more celebrities. These things are going to disappear into the ethers anyway. So it's like we're clawing at this desperate need to be immortal, but like we're denying our humanity by admitting that we all go away. So I don't know. It just kind of seems futile.
Would you consider this podcast a ship of Theseus? Are we immortalized through this episode?
No, because there's
Well,
a million podcasts out there. The minute people stop listening, I mean, like assuming
Well,
we
I
get
think that there's something there's a linguistic difference though, because I think immortality and permanence are a little bit different. At least the way you're explaining it to me, Ayla. I think that you're talking the way you speak about posterity. Yes, in a sea of podcasts, our podcast probably won't, crest the wave at any point, but technically Mike is right. We are sort of immortalized or at least permanentized in this conversation. Now, it doesn't do us much good because whoever listens to this in 400 years, I mean, I hope that I'm still around, but I doubt it.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of what I was alluding to was the tree falling in the woods. You can have that permanence, but if it doesn't get witnessed, it's just the same as not existing. But I see your point too, Mike. I mean, yeah, in some ways it's kind of cool to know my voice will be forever.
so then what does it mean to be immortal? Because
I think immortality is just it's staying alive in the hearts of other people. I think that
Aw.
that's really all it is. I think it is. I think that that's kind of what we're striving for. We're striving to be remembered after we leave by the people that we love, and hopefully even more, maybe some of the people that we pass along the way in life, people who may not even know us. And the whole concept of fame is just so that people remember you when you die.
There's a lot of philosophers that talk about fame sort of being like this empty pursuit for this reason. Like all humans are forgotten over a long enough time span. And if you just sit and think for a second, if you removed yourself and took your point of view, I don't know, just a million light years away, and you looked at the Earth, could you really see what was happening?
No, you wouldn't even see the Earth.
Yeah, you can't see anything. It's just like a bunch of dots somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So this. No,
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, finish your thought. It's interesting. I like that idea.
So fame and henceforth, for if you let me kind of take a reach here, immortality becomes a very fruitless endeavor because of the fact that over a long enough time span, every human will become irrelevant. Unless, of course, there's something to preserve this knowledge that I'm assuming that one, humans are going to die out. If they live on forever, I still think what happens on Earth is going to be so inconsequential to whatever universal capital that they make or galactic capital that they have, that our culture may be just like this. Like the ancient Greek culture ends up being an obscured thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still like the Aristotles, there's still that stuff. But if you remove that and put it into space, now you have to like track, I don't know, the Martian Greeks, whatever, however they set up their society in the future. You have to learn that history and then learn the history of Earth. And then whatever planet you grow up on, you're going to probably learn that planet's history. So it becomes this really, really strange spiral into like nothingness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, Ayla, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I remember diving into the Akashic records a couple years ago, and it's this idea that somewhere there's this big library that immortalizes every human experience and every reiteration of your soul if you reincarnate. In theory, it would have Martian books as well. And so I was reading something and I had this dream where I actually visited, and I remember I saw a little book on a shelf and there was like a whole series of them and they were all my little lives, and I picked one up and like living is like jumping into a page and then you can come back. And I remember I just put the book back on the shelf and I was like, oh, cool. And it's like I didn't have any desire to read any of those books because I was kind of like this otherness or something. But I was like, it's cool that it's there. And so, but it's just funny because it was like, yeah, I mean, like when you start thinking about it, like in that grander scale, one, it takes the pressure off because you're like, I mean, whoa, like we really are here just to be in the present. We really are here just to live. Like, but I don't know. It's almost as if there's a reason that this concept of immortality is so foreign and so hard to understand. Okay, I'm just rambling now. I thought I had a point.
Okay. All right.
And humans always, like, we all want to be immortal. like, you know, authorship is, like you said, like is a way to reach for it. So I think it's an innate human desire to be remembered after our deaths.
Mm.
And
I think it's just an innate human desire to cheat death. And, you know, I think the irony of this whole like singularity at some point, unless they figure out a way to take our brains and keep them alive so that we can still experience the things, like all
brain
you're
in the
really
jar.
doing, yeah, brain in the jar. All you're really doing is kind of just this is the irony, is like you're propelling yourself for people who you'll never meet. And, you know, like, and just like Ayla said with the sort of like seeing all of your lives on a shelf in the library, you know, here's my question. In 1 million, not 1 million, that's too many. In 200 years, do you think there'll be somebody trying to look you up on the consciousness computer?
Oh, geez, Rick. I'm pretty sure there will be. I hope so. I mean, just out of like curiosity, I hope like maybe some future descendant of mine, or you know, maybe not looking for me, but bump into me. That'd be pretty funny. That'd be pretty good. But you never know. Like, also too, there are some humans that are born posthumously, right? So one of us, like this podcast, may take off 400 years from now, or 200 years from now, which causes everybody to look us up, right?
That would
Give a
really
consciousness
suck.
computer. Hey, it happened.
We're gonna go out like Van Gogh, man.
Right? Pretty much.
For those of you 400 years in the future, Van Gogh was this artist from like
400 years ago.
from the 1700s, who was really, really talented but never got any recognition until he died. So.
Oh man, have you ever looked into Picasso's backstory? By the way, speaking of like famous artists.
Well, didn't he get hectic?
Well, okay, I can't remember the specifics, but I watched that comedy show Nanette, and wow, like apparently Picasso was a bad guy. So I don't know. And I was thinking about him when you brought up Van Gogh, only because the idea that somebody could hear us 200 years from now or 400 years from now, I mean, like, I don't know if one of you said it best, but it was kind of like, do I care about that person? Like, I mean, I guess that there's some like far distant lineage, maybe, but I mean, like, how often are you looking up your great grandfather?
This is what we can do right now. Hey, people, 500 years from now, if you are listening, give us a sign. Go back into the past and come give us a sign.
Hey.
Okay?
Just not while I'm sleeping, please.
Yeah. Don't show up while we're sleeping, please. That's really rude. Yeah, I don't know what your system and culture is like 500 years, but we knock and we usually text before we show up. So let us know.
We have this really archaic thing called a cell phone in our pocket, and we type on this. Could you imagine trying to explain that?
Yeah. Even though we can project our voices over this device to speak with each other directly, we actually prefer to write in characters instead.
And hieroglyphs.
Very,
very modern hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
This is like explaining to somebody younger than you. Yeah. I'm just thinking about like when we used to have calculators and like type in the numbers, turn it upside down, be like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
It says something. Like, sheesh. Time flies.
Yeah.
But that is a good idea. And you know what also, Nick, because the thing is I've listened to a very small amount of lectures on time, and I'm going to do it for you this time. You can hear about some of those ramblings on our discussion of the Gateway Experiment series. But just, I don't think we have the right understanding of time. Like, just from what I've kind of scratched on the surface and just thinking about it, there's some element or variable that we have never thought about. Like, that's just my gut feeling, that there's going to be some other physics discovery or variable or interaction or something that's going to break it down. But I do feel like time is
get outside of it first.
Yeah. No, there's just something weird. There's something fishy about it.
Well, of course. It's because it's a dimension that we live in and that we can't really perceive except for like a little inner clock that we have.
Right, but it's also something that's measured by a physical thing spinning around a physical thing, and a
Mhm.
physical thing aging,
Mhm.
and something's fishy about it. And we're getting off the rails. I'm sorry. I'm really good at getting
Wait.
things off the rail. Sorry,
I'll
Mike.
I'll be the conspiracy theorist. Time isn't real.
Mm.
We need a
Thank you.
yeah.
I
It's a
mean, I'm not
social
wrong.
construct, man.
Yeah.
It actually is, though, right?
No, I
I mean,
know,
we're
it is.
social beings. We just decide that, like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and this is what
Yeah,
we're gonna
we
do, and then
decided
we
that
all
when
get on the.
when we decided that when the sun came up and went down and then came up again, that was one unit, you know,
Yeah.
and that was it.
Yeah,
if you
and
think
why didn't we
about-
base it on the moon, right? Like, it's all about the sun. What about the moon?
We do
Moon
base
cares
a
about
lot
us.
of time on the moon, though.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to get heated, so.
Okay.
Because time is just it's every bit of the universe from subatomic to the largest things moving one atomic distance over however you want to quantize time, right? And like all the cellular processes, all everything, however you want to chop it up, that one discrete unit, however your brain can process that little chunk, that's what I think we call time.
You know, this reminds me of, if you guys haven't, I know you guys have seen it, but it reminds me of the "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" episode on time.
Yeah.
So what?
It's such a good show.
It is.
What
You've
show?
seen it. It's called "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared." It's on YouTube. It's those puppets with like the really creepy episodes, like 6 episodes or whatever.
If you're listening, especially into the future, do not watch this puppet show. Those are
Watch it.
frightening. No,
Green
it's
is
not
not a creative
funny.
color.
Oh
Green
my
is
god,
not
no.
a creative
I
color.
hate
That's right.
I hate it. Oh my god, it's the
I
worst.
love that show. That show's amazing.
No, it's like, imagine watching that made me feel like I was in a psych ward chained to a bed somewhere. Like,
Yeah,
it was
that's
the
what it's
worst
supposed to be.
feeling.
Yeah.
No, I don't need that. Mm-mm.
Well,
Enough problems.
all right.
It made me feel at home, so I guess I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Great. You're my little, what is it, like, I don't know, neighbor. Like, we're talking to each other from a vent or something like that. Anyway,
We're
I don't
in a
know.
wall. Yeah, there's just one wall dividing us three. Like we're actually just all in an insane asylum. All right, now it's off the rails.
Yes. All right. I think that probably is going to end the conversation for the day. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
There's virtue in ships that stay the course. How about that?
I like it. Very good. Ayla, anything?
I think that continuity of self, despite your hurtling through space and time, is of great importance. And so to think about, I guess just what Mike said. I mean, like, it's all like there's one thing intrinsic to you, and it's that thing that you can't see or touch or smell or describe or anything. So be you in the most esoteric and confusing way possible.
All right. And just want to thank you guys so much for listening again. We hope that you enjoyed this little exo bit. We have these every Friday night at 8 p.m. And then we have our main episodes on Monday night at 8 p.m. Please feel free to give us a shout out or give us a follow on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube at Exofathom, all one word. And consider visiting us over at the thinkering.space, where you can catch the list of podcasts that we have there. It's not just Exofathom, that would be the Thinkering Report, The Plank with Joe, and If Numbers Can Talk. Anyways, I think that's all I got for this evening. Thank you guys so much again. If you like this stuff, please consider giving us a subscription on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know how you feel. And until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.